Hello folks, and welcome back to my channel. It's another Try to Get Ready with me. Today's is on a little bit of a nuanced subject that I'd like to have an honest and frank conversation about. I do want to preference that I think it is a subject with a lot of different layers, and I'm gonna try to do it justice in this video, but it is definitely a complex subject. So I'd like to talk about the piercing industry, how we get into the piercing industry, who is in the piercing industry, what that means to these people, and where all of this intersects with clients' rights to safe, well done, properly performed piercings with good quality jewelry. I was having a conversation the other day with another piercer who I know who had someone recently come out and shadow them who is in a not great situation. The piercer in question who came into the shadowing works at a not great studio using not great jewelry. They've not been properly trained. They don't know how to do just a lot of basic, simple stuff. During the shadowing process, my friend realized that this person does not know how to properly sterilize jewelry, and is potentially putting unsterile jewelry and unsterile tools on clients, is not properly reprocessing tools, so is potentially like spreading bloodborne pathogens at like worst case scenario from one client to another. Like just some very dangerous stuff going on. And after the end of the day of shadowing, my friend sat down with this person and was like, hey, I like mean this from the best place. I know you're passionate about piercing and you care about piercing, but what you're doing is really dangerous and really unsafe and could really hurt someone. You really need to consider taking a step back, like getting a new apprenticeship, working front of house for a little bit, maybe even not working in the industry for a little bit, like saving up some money so that you can relocate to a better situation, to a better studio, because right now you're really, really seriously potentially hurting people. And the piercer in question who is shadowing my friend said, I totally get where you're coming from. That is not an option for me. Like, I come from a low income situation and a low income background, and piercing right now is how I make my money. It's how I survive. I would not make like comparable money like working, stocking shelves or working as a barista. Like, I need this income to survive and live my life. And also piercing is like incredibly important to me. It's important that I am like in this industry and working in this industry. Like, this is very affirming for me. This person in question is a trans piercer of color. So there's a lot of intersectionalities there. Like, piercing is important to them culturally as a person of color. It's important to them as a queer person, especially with piercing's history in the queer community, and it's important to them as a trans person. Piercing has been very, very gender affirming for them. So they were like, I totally understand, and I, like, that's not an option for me, so I would like to continue, like, shadowing and learning and becoming, like, the best piercer I can, and if I can get into a situation where I can work in a better quality studio, like, with better jewelry, obviously, like, I would love that, but that's not my situation right now, so I've got to make like the most of what I've got. And my friend was like, okay, like I get that. Went on to like talk with them a little bit more. A couple weeks go by, this piercer reaches back out to my friend. There has been a documented case of staph that they have spread to a client because they don't use proper cross-contamination and sterilization protocols. And this is where my friend reached out to me and was like, Lynn, like, what do I do? And this really raised a lot of good questions for me mentally and emotionally, which is like, where is the intersection, right? Because on one hand, obviously, like, clients should be our first priority. Always. Clients should be our first priority. They're coming to us. They're trusting us with their bodies. They're trusting us with their health. They're trusting us with their emotional and mental and spiritual well-being through the experience of piercing. Piercing can be a very intimate, very intense experience. There's so much that goes into it. And we do have the potential to cause grievous bodily harm if we are not being so careful in how we work and what we do, and making sure that we are operating at a safe level. And beyond even just like your skill set as a piercer, like being able to do properly done, well-placed piercings, like infection control is a huge and important part of our job. And if you are not doing that correctly, like someone could get seriously hurt. I think it was like last year, a man in the UK died from an infection from like a home done shitty tattoo. It's really no joke when we talk about these things. There is absolutely like a right and a wrong way to go about getting into the industry and to go about doing piercing safely. And when we talk about like getting into the industry and having an education and being a good piercer, like there is just so much that goes into it. And if I'm being honest, like opportunities for someone to get into the industry in the right way and do high quality, proper, safe piercings as a baseline, is hard. It's hard. There's really not that many good studios doing good piercing the right way, the safe way, and they're typically only able to take 1 or 2 people on to apprentice at the time. If you're lucky enough to live in an area with those studios, if you're not, you either have to consider moving, you have to travel across the country. It's a ton of work. You know, I've spoken many times here on my channel about my experience with an apprenticeship, that it took me 4 years to get my final good apprenticeship. It took me a cross-country move, and I did not have it easy in doing that. I did not come from a background of money. I had to work 2, sometimes 3 jobs to afford to pay for my apprenticeships, but I still had a certain level of privilege in accessing that as someone who is white, as someone who at the time presented cisgender. It was easier for me to navigate a lot of those spaces, to network, to get into some of those rooms, to make those connections, to get those opportunities. Not everyone has that same level of opportunity. Not everyone lives in a town or a state or a city or even a country with good quality piercers that they can learn from and train from. Not everyone has the physical ability to work 2 or 3 jobs to pay for their expenses while they work on getting an apprenticeship or working in a studio, or God forbid, getting an unpaid apprenticeship, because that's all they can find in their area. Many people will find it harder to get into the same rooms and have the same conversations and networking and experiences, because there is still a lot of racism and homophobia and sexism and transphobia in this industry, as much as I think many of us would like to pretend that there's not. All of this already, and we haven't even touched on the fact that piercing as an industry has a lot of problematic history in colonization and in stealing elements of this industry and tattooing from different indigenous cultures around the world. And when we look at anti-tattoo and piercing laws, a lot of them were created to, limit indigenous people's method of expressing their cultures. A lot of these laws started in Eastern Europe to repress the pagans and the Picts. They started here in America to repress indigenous American tribes. Like, there is a long and storied history that this industry oftentimes likes to ignore, of the way that we made it literally illegal for these people to practice their culture, and then found a way to monetize their culture and make it cool and trendy to the majority of people, and now we can make a lot of money off of it. So there are these huge intersections of disenfranchisement within the piercing industry that make it very hard to get into the industry as a person of color, as a queer person, as a trans person, as a gender non-conforming person. And so it's already extremely difficult to get into the industry in a safe and reputable way, and it is twice as hard if you are a member of any of those marginalized groups. So disproportionately, folks from marginalized backgrounds are probably going to end up in not good apprenticeships and at not good studios and not being properly trained. Or they're going to say, fuck this whole apprenticeship system to begin with. All I hear about is the abuse and violence that happens in apprenticeships, which it does. I've talked about it so much here on my channel. I'm just going to learn and figure out how to do this on my own, because I don't want to deal with potentially being abused or being in these unsafe situations. And so we have all of these piercers and all of these tattoo artists now, especially in this younger generation, who would find it incredibly difficult to learn how to do this the right way, who are opting to just take whatever opportunity they can get to get into an industry that is incredibly, like, culturally and identity-wise important to them. And then we have situations like the one my friend was in, where this is a person who has been disenfranchised and kind of pushed out of the industry in an area where it is very difficult for them to access safe, proper education in studios, who is trying to do the best that they can. However, they have such a lack of knowledge, they have such a lack of proper training and proper education, that what they're doing is so dangerous that they gave someone what could potentially be a life-threatening infection. Like, they landed a client in a hospital. They are potentially exposing people to strangers' blood and bodily fluids and bacteria. They are doing piercings that are not properly placed, that are not well done, with not good quality jewelry, that are going to permanently scar their clients' bodies and potentially cause really serious issues and concerns. And that's not okay. That's not okay. Like, there's no reality, there's no nothing where, like, doing that type of harm to your clients' bodies is ever okay, especially once you know, right? Once you've gone, you shattered another piercer, you realize, like, oh shit, like, we're not even properly using an autoclave, I'm not properly reprocessing tools, I am not sterilizing jewelry correctly, like, I could very seriously hurt someone. It is not okay to go back and continue doing that. It really should have never been okay to do that in the first place. At the same time, like, truly, what is the alternative for some of these people? You know, I have people who reach out to me whose nearest APP member is over 400 miles away, who have no one closer to them who uses good quality jewelry or would be a safe studio to apprentice at, or God forbid they live somewhere where the only APP member they could see for piercings is a known and outed predator and abuser. So their only option, if they do want to work in a good quality safe studio, is to work for someone who has a reputation for literally physically abusing employees, staff, and clients. What do we as an industry expect these people to do? And I'm so guilty of this myself in the past. I have always, for a very long time, been a proponent of, like, clients' bodies before piercers' egos. You could basically put that shit on a shirt at this point with how much I've said it, and I agree with it. I agree with it a lot, because very often when I see people prioritize their desire to be in the industry and their piercing career, even when they're doing unsafe stuff, it's because they care more about being a body piercer than they do about doing good piercings and safe piercings for their clients. So I do still stand by saying that, but I definitely have often in the past kind of ignored the question of, like, well, then what do we want these people to do? You know, because I moved across the country. I dealt with horrific abuse in my apprenticeship, and I don't want anyone else to have to do that. That's why I push for paid apprenticeships and try and put this education out there. But sometimes people message me in these situations, and I am even dumbfounded. I am like, man, I wish I had better advice for you. Like, you have been dealt a shit hand. You are living in a tricky part of the country to try and get an apprenticeship. There's not a lot of options and opportunity around you. Like, the best advice I have for you is to work a different job, save up a bunch of money, and try your best to network so that you can move somewhere else. And that's not a great answer. That's not a great answer for someone who dreams of being in this industry, for someone whom this industry is crucially important to their identity or their culture or their religious or spiritual beliefs. And I don't know what a better answer is. You know, we as an industry have been preaching, get into the industry the right way, do everything the right way, get this quality apprenticeship. You know, apprenticeships are going to be hard, but, like, here's how you do it. And we've really ignored just how difficult that is for a lot of people, especially a lot of people from marginalized groups. And we've really ignored the way that this industry has kind of developed in many areas where most people don't have access to a way to do this safely. And so I look at situations like the one where my friend was in, where this person should not be piercing clients, should not be paying clients, not in the situation they're in, not with the studio supplies they've been given, not with the training and education they've been given. And this person, you know, they did an apprenticeship. A studio offered to train them. It was a bad studio. They didn't train them well, but this person thought they were doing things right because they went to a studio, they got an apprenticeship, they got trained, and now they've restructured their life around being in this industry, and they decide to go and do continuing education and find out that literally every single thing that they've been taught is wrong or incorrect, and they're potentially hurting people. And you know, what do we tell someone like this, for whom being in the industry is so important and so affirming? Someone who's going to have a much harder time making it in the industry than other people would. And how do we do this in a way that keeps clients safe? Because that's like the biggest thing for me, is that like clients are getting hurt all of the time, and my instinctual reaction is to say, like, we do the work we can to improve the industry from the inside, while continually stressing like client safety has to be our foremost concern, because these people are coming to us and trusting us and trusting us with their bodies and with their lives and with their health and with their safety, and that is such like a sacred amount of trust that holds so much gravity. And so we should never ever be doing things that could potentially violate that trust or be unsafe or dangerous or harmful. But like, what do we as an industry actually do to make it more accessible for people of color and queer people and trans people to get a job in this industry, to be successful? How do we make more studios safer so people aren't sitting here with no good studios for 500 miles around them, where they can learn to do this safely and cleanly and correctly? How do we have conversations that acknowledge that the priority has to be on the client's body and on the client's health and safety, while simultaneously acknowledging the way this disproportionately affects people of color and queer people and trans people who want to be in this industry, for whom this industry is so important and so affirming and so a part of their identity and culture? And we have commodified this industry so heavily that it is so difficult and impossible for these people. My GoPro batteries died, so we're finishing this video on my phone so that I can get to the rest of my filming for the day. But how do we have these conversations? Like, how do we improve this as an industry? There is a problem here. The industry is overlooking the reality of people's situation and people's lives with this. And we just talk a lot about getting into the industry safely and doing things the right way, and the exact perfect right path to an apprenticeship. And I don't think there's enough acknowledgement of how limited and how difficult it is, and how unrealistic a lot of that is for a lot of people of different groups who don't have access to this, who can't just move across the country for an apprenticeship, who don't have the same networking opportunities, who aren't even going to have the same ability to get into a room to have those networking opportunities. And man, it's difficult. Like, I spoke with my friend and I was like, man, do we know anyone, any studio anywhere who could potentially take this person on and like try to help retrain them and try to get them into a better place? And there's like one place that's hiring half of a country away, and this person is like, I can't afford to move across the country, and I can't uproot my life and my family. Like, I'm like financially I'm stuck in the region that I'm in, and there's no opportunities for me here. I'm going to try and do the best I can with the situation that I have. And you know, we're trying to help this person get scholarship opportunities to go to conference and connect and do more shadowing. But in the meantime, this person is going to be potentially injuring people. I mean, they've already given one person a staph infection. It's so not okay. And I don't have the answers. I don't have all the answers. I made this video because I don't have all the answers, and because I want to be transparent with everyone on here, and with all of my followers, and to, you know, hopefully start conversations where we can find the answers and we can sit down and come together as an industry and as people who care and say, we have these problems in this industry, and what are we going to do to fix it? How are we going to fix it? So that's been weighing heavy on my mind like all week since my friend messaged me. And how do we fix the piercing industry, y'all? I don't know, but that's the shit that I think about in my free time. That's the shit that weighs on me. Anyway, I am doing this Try to Get Ready With Me before a big long day of filming. I'm trying to film the last of the August and September content today. It is May right now, and my goal to give myself a little summer break where I don't have to work on any content and I can just have a life and maybe like go to the movies and go to the beach and not just go to work and do piercings and make content all the time. So I am about to go do a whole bunch of filming, but I want to sit down and get some of these thoughts out of my head and some of these feelings that I've been having and hopefully start a conversation. So I'd love to hear from people in the comments what they think about what I've presented, if they have faced similar difficulties getting an apprenticeship or getting into the industry, if you've had bad piercings done by bad piercers and you feel strongly about making sure that doesn't happen to other people. I would just love to hear people's inputs and thoughts, and please be like kind in the comments. This is again like a very, I think, nuanced situation with a lot of layers, and I'm not necessarily presenting this in like a perfectly researched academic way. I'm just kind of talking about my experiences and my feelings. So if I've misspoke or like if there's anything you think I've missed, let's chat about it. All right, folks, I'm going to head off and get to doing a whole bunch of filming and making a whole bunch of videos for you. Thanks so much for sitting down and hanging out with me again, and I will see you for the next one. Bye.